So tēnā koutou katoa, no katikati ahau, kei Wellington toku kāinga I Nainei, I te mahi o mō staff, I Nainei ka mahi mō te Science Media Centre. Ko Rachel Thomas toku ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hi, I'm Rachel Thomas. I'm the former health reporter for Stuff and the Dominion Post. I now work for the Science Media Centre in Wellington, and I'm here, obviously, to talk about sugar tax. For years, there's been a lot of talk about whether the government should do the deed, with the legislation in place to tax sugary drinks. I found this topic very interesting as a reporter, but I felt the coverage had become a bit of a vacuum. So I submitted a proposal for a project. In early 2017, I won a scholarship from NIB at the Canon Media Awards, which funded this proposal. Just a quick disclaimer, this was an investigation, not a campaign. I neither support nor oppose sugary drink taxes, and I'm not a public health expert. I am a journalist, and today I can present to you my findings based on my interviews and observations during this project. Okay, I've got to coordinate this. Here we go. So little did I know that this would take me halfway around the world. What better place to look at than America? They have a lot of taxes, a lot of sugar, a lot of obesity, and a lot of people. In fact, it's the second most obese country in the OECD. We are third. As you know, we have very similar rates of obesity and share the US legacy of skyrocketing type 2 diabetes. The journey took me to two cities in the US. Berkeley in Northern California and Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. So I chose Berkeley because the first US municipality to adopt a tax and has become a bit of a poster child for sugar tax. Surrounding cities like San Francisco and Oakland have seen its success and adopted their own taxes. The city's residents voted in the tax in November 2014, and it came into effect January 2015. Berkeley is highly educated and very liberal. It's in Northern California, it's very affluent, but about 20% of its residents were still below the poverty line. Their obesity statistics are even worse than ours. As a frontrunner, Berkeley had longer than anywhere else to see the effects of the tax, whether that's regarding the effects on consumption, on jobs, on city finances. It doesn't necessarily mean they had a lot of good data, but that's part of the reason I wanted to do my own R&D on the ground. This is the rate Berkeley chose to tax its fizzy drink. For reference, a 12-ounce can of soda is about 12 ounces, so 12 ounce added to that. 1.5 litres is 50 ounces, so about 50 cents extra on large bottles. It was levied on distributors and enforced through a third-party contractor. Included were typical sugar-sweetened fizzy drinks, fruit-flavoured drinks, syrups, energy drinks, and sports drinks. Berkeley did not include diet drinks or anything sweetened with stevia or common substitutes or 100% juices or milk-based drinks. Alright, so how they did it. So a proposed tax was strongly rejected in 2012 in the neighbouring city of Richmond. So city councillors went quietly to community groups, churches, PTAs and schools to collect support before they even made the proposal public. Around the same time this was happening, the community schools had lost their revenue for their school cooking and gardening programs, so there was a sudden need for money. Councillor Linda Meyer told me the tax was seen as a way to reinvigorate these programs. Perhaps the most significant thing about Berkeley, which has about the same population as Tauranga, is the way lawmakers turned residents against the beverage industry. So the beverage industry campaigned hard against the tax when it was proposed, but the city came back with, you might be able to see in that bottom left corner of that image, there's Berkeley versus Big Soda. So it was this kind of David and Goliath thing. The mayor said, we framed it as this is a campaign for our community. This is a big corporation that has a lot of money, that doesn't care about half of our children. And in a community like Berkeley, where there's a strong anti-establishment undercurrent, this went down pretty well with residents. 76% of them got behind this stance. So, what happened? There's quite a few different numbers about consumptions and levels after the tax. Different studies have found consumption dropped about 10% in the first year. And another found consumption went down by more than twice that in low-income areas. Coke and Pepsi distributors reportedly absorbed most of the tax initially, but ultimately about half of it is passed on to consumers down the chain. The American Beverage Association says after the tax took effect, residents' energy intake went up by about 32 calories each day because it was offset by them switching to untaxed drinks such as smoothies that were higher in fat. And they pointed to a slight increase in consumption in neighbouring cities, because obviously you could just drive over a bridge and buy something that's untaxed. When I was there, San Francisco had a sugar tax on the way, but it hadn't taken effect yet, same with Oakland and a few other surrounding areas. So it'll be interesting to see how those numbers change now that has taken effect. Public health expert Christine Madsen from UC Berkeley told me that she believed that incremental health impacts would mount up and show over the city's entire population, but it would take about a decade. And she also believed that that model that Berkeley used would be relatively easy to scale up to a country like New Zealand. So, since it took effect, in 2015, the sugar tax has raised just over $5 million. This goes into the city's general fund, so it's not actually ring-fenced. But essentially the equivalent has been spent on health and nutrition programs, and this was always the idea. This is advised by an expert panel. Berkeley's Unified Schools District got the biggest chunk, pursuing the school's gardening and nutrition programs. They're designed to teach students of all ages how to grow and harvest food, and it's especially targeted to African American and Latino students. Healthy Black Families, which is a local initiative founded by a former obstetrician gynecologist and a single mum, has successfully applied for about $760,000 in funding since the tax took effect. They're using this to train educators and water ambassadors in schools, teach the city's marginalised Black community on healthy eating habits and cooking, things like how to feed a family of four for $10 or less. Funding has also been dished out to projects designed to improve diabetes awareness and reduce dental cavities by improving access to dental care. So when I came up with this proposal in early 2017, Philadelphia was the newest city to adopt a tax, and it was the first major city. Philadelphia has almost 1.6 million people, so more comparable to the size of, say, Auckland. A new Bloomberg study just reiterated that in Philadelphia the gap between the rich and poor is widening, and it remains one of the biggest nationwide in large cities in the States. More than a third of the city's children are growing up in poverty. Philadelphia didn't let its residents vote for the tax, it was passed through a council vote. Much like New Zealand, Philadelphia also had high consumption rates of soda among children, which we obviously heard before. The rates in New Zealand are very high, and it's even worse for Māori and Pacifica children. With high consumption comes jobs. There was also a strong industry presence in Philadelphia. A lot of residents' livelihoods rely on the income they get driving for Coke or Pepsi. So the tax in Philadelphia is higher than Berkeley. It adds about $1 to the cost of a 2-litre bottle of soda, or 75 cents to a 1.5-litre bottle. Again, this is a tax on distributors, but naturally much of it is passed on to retailers and then consumers. Philadelphia also included diet drinks, controversially, or anything with natural sweeteners, including stevia. Philadelphia was a little more lenient on exceptions for fruit and vegetable or milk-based drinks, the requirement of about 50% rather than 100%, like in Berkeley. So, two prior efforts to pass the soda tax failed. Those efforts had marketed a 3-cent per ounce tax as a health initiative with the added bonus of revenue. So when that didn't work, they halved the tax and they changed the message. had to be less about health and consumption and more about reducing poverty. The city had plenty of poverty. The tax would be for early childcare, or they call it pre-K, parks and community schools, community schools bring medical resources, food, job training and quality education and other family support services into existing public schools. In total, the city put about $2.5 million into promoting the tax. In contrast, the American Beverage Association spent about four times this, about $10 million trying to defeat the tax. One of their members was also reported saying the Beverage Association offered $10 million to the city for its childcare expansion in exchange for a one-year hiatus from any talk of a soda tax. But ultimately, the council voted the tax in, 13 votes to 4. That's the Mayor, Jim Kenny, who campaigned for the tax for 3 years. He was behind the original 3 cent per ounce proposal as well. And that line there is what finally won support of the other councillors in the city. The revenue would bring the biggest infrastructure investment in the city's history. This is a graph from the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is the daily newspaper there, on how the estimated funds were intended to be spent. The city expected to collect about $400 million over 5 years. It's obviously a huge amount of money. The tax was intended to fund 6,500 early childcare slots over 5 years, open 25 community schools, and pay a bond that would allow that massive construction project to go ahead. So in Philadelphia, the results have been a bit mixed. For a start, 2,000 childcare spots were funded in the first year, which created jobs for teachers in that area. $66 million was raised, but this was down from the original projections of $90 million. In March 2017, Pepsi laid off between 80 and 100 employees at 2 distribution plants, and they blamed the layoffs explicitly on the tax. There's another there about a black market. I spoke to a union man who represents a lot of drivers for the industry, and he showed me photos of men driving white unmarked vans which were carrying soda, and he said they're buying it outside the city in bulk and they're selling it on street corners to retailers for cash. And they're not the same as us. They don't use EPOS like everywhere like we do, so there are quite a few stores that you'd see cash only signs, and there are so many taxes there you kind of wonder, is this just to get around all the taxes? The ABA, American Beverage Association, challenged the legality of the tax. It's illegal to tax something twice in Philadelphia, and they already had a sales tax. So the argument was, you did a sales tax and there's also a beverage tax. But because it was a tax on distributors, this fight went all the way to the Supreme Court, but it was thrown out. There were no problems around the legality ultimately. But the challenge, which went on for a few years, meant the city had to sit on the money, and it hamstrung the programs it was intended to pay for while that process was ongoing. I spoke to this woman, Candice Wiener. She runs a couple of early childcare centres that serve children in poor areas of the city. One full-time slot is worth $8,500 there. The centres were funded for 60 places through the tax. They went from 20 staff to 35, including 8 full-time. Through that, families also get food, learning resources, parenting resources, clothes. I went to one of her centres and she made it very clear that the tax had been transformative. She said, most of the children we brought in have never gone to any type of schooling at all. They're the children that we need to reach, not only for the good of their families, but for the health and long-term future of our city. This is Jeff Brown. Jeff owns 11 ShopRite grocery stores in the city, and as well as a few outside the city's borders. So he's seen how the tax has affected his sales. He told me, "I've done $40 million in sales for the year in my city stores, which has made my entire supermarket business unprofitable." The city argues that it was a tax on sales, again, not on retailers, so it's essentially not the city's problem if distributors are passing the tax on to him, and they say it's his cost to bear if he passes it on to consumers and they choose to shop elsewhere. So these graphs were released in March 2018 by the City Controller as part of a larger effort to increase transparency and show how the public was spending, how the city was spending the taxpayer money. So the big yellow bars there are what's in the general fund, the blue bars are what's gone into the early childcare, and the small orange one is the community schools. So if you compare that with our graph from earlier, it looks quite different. These graphs on the left were extremely contentious, and the Mayor's office claimed the data was misleading because most of the revenue was held in the general fund as the legal battle went on. The other issue was that the Mayor told me very explicitly that these programs, such as the early childcare and community schools, they needed new sources of funding. There was no money anywhere else for them. So he said, to be clear, there is no backup plan. So basically, if this tax was going to be repealed, these programs were going to go away. Effectively, that means that the city's programs to alleviate poverty are now hamstrung by the tax. Their success depends on people continuing to buy soda, which raises a bit of an ethical argument, particularly due to the regressive nature of flat rate taxes. So as you can see, there's very different motivations and methods behind these two cities. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. A message that works in one place might not work in another. One thing is certain though, these taxes certainly generate revenue. The question around whether they've worked is somewhat subjective. It's clear that in Berkeley, the tax is doing what it was intended to do in funding these healthy food programs. In Philadelphia, that remains to be seen. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.